There's a common thread over the last few months especially, but really as a general statement, of this argument. It's not the time or place. Not the time or place. You know, I can agree with certain things, that it's not the time and place. Standing outside of a funeral with graphic abortion images is not the time. But it's a church, so it's probably the right place at some point. But it ain't the right time. We know that. Fred Phelps, the Westboro Baptist Church, they showed us just how bad of timing that would be. It wouldn't be right. Preschools. Preschools are not the place. Now, it might be 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which means schools all over the place are getting out of school, and it's a really prime time to talk to people. But a preschool isn't the place to hold up a graphic image. Not the time and place. The problem is that people use this cop-out saying, really, I don't know a better word for it, this cop-out to tell us where we can and cannot hold a graphic abortion sign. And so that you can understand that I'm not just talking about standing outside of a high school, even though I just received Hand of Hope that came to us received a phone call about how the high school wasn't the time and the place. And Todd Bullis, I think most of us at one point or another have heard that already. But that's not what I'm talking about. I shouldn't say that's not all I'm talking about. Because you see, we take graphic images sometimes to the abortion clinics. But Abby Johnson, the world's largest pro-life hero, says that graphic images don't belong at abortion clinics because the women are already hurting enough. And we don't want to hurt poor innocent victim murderers. But then at the same time we said, we need to leave the clinics and we need to go to the front lines instead of standing at the last line of defense, and we're going to go to the high schools. And Abby Johnson threatened violence if anyone was ever to show up at her child's school. She demonstrates the point that I'm going for here. Because then some abolitionists went out to a random corner. It was a well-populated area, lots of foot traffic, and they stood out on the corner with their signs and they talked to people and handed out flyers. Well, David Crowder, not the musician, but the big news guy who sits and he makes a career out of mocking and offending people, came up and spent over a half hour telling them how they were not in the right time and place to be doing the work that they're doing. We go to the churches for church repent projects. We go to the churches to exhort or to protest bad churches or good churches that are falling or failing in one area. We're told it's not the time or place. The question is, where is? When David Crowder was asked, he couldn't really give an answer. I mean, he said, you know, maybe you should go to the abortion clinics, but then when we go to the abortion clinics, we have Abby Johnson saying, you can't be at the abortion clinics, this isn't the time and place. And then when we change from there to go to the churches, we have Christians all over the place, including these big pro-life, open-air speaker pastors. I know you know who we're talking about. They're the guys that write blogs about how we're all demonically possessed and how we're anti-God and anti-church. Those guys say all this stuff because in front of a church is not the time or the place. So then we take it from there and we go to the schools, to the high schools. Kids that are old enough and mature enough to understand what we're talking about, but young enough that they haven't been hardened like the rest of the world yet. Oh yeah. And we're told that we're at the wrong place at the wrong time. And none of these people will actually tell us what the right place and the right time is. See, we can go back to Abby Johnson, and she's told us why it is. Because she doesn't want to be offended. David Crowder loves, I mean, literally, the guy's career is made going on the streets and offending people. This is what he does for a living. I've actually enjoyed much of his radio show. If David Crowder happens to be watching this, dude, I like a lot of the stuff you've done. You've earned my respect over the years for quite a few different things. But you make a living offending people publicly. So, nobody has an answer for us. Because nobody wants to admit that they get offended when they see images, and they get offended for one of two reasons. Either one, because they have had a part in abortion, and it hurts because they know that they are a murderer, at the very least in their heart, and for many with their own flesh and blood, or because they hold that moral action or moral opinion that we talked about last week, but they don't have the courage or the audacity to take moral action. And we put that in their faces, and they're hurt and offended because we're doing what they know they're supposed to be doing, but they don't have the courage, the faith, or the tenacity to do it. So I started this off by pointing out the only two places that I can think of off the top of my head, I'm sure there's one or two other ones, that is not the right time and place. But somebody might be asking, what is the right time and place? And I am not going to give you a comprehensive list of that, because I'd run out of breath, I'd run out of camera space. YouTube wouldn't upload a video that long, and if they did, it'd take me like 6 months to do the upload, because it'd take me a month to list off. But here we go, in front of a school, in front of a church, on a street corner, outside your home, at major concerts, festivals, sporting arenas, film studios, libraries. Did I say public squares yet? Public squares. I'll repeat. Public squares, street corners, public squares, street corners. Concert venues, churches, seminary schools. Did I say street corners? Street corners. If you can imagine a place where a human being may walk past you, and where you may have the opportunity to have a conversation with them, or where they may happen to see the imagery, that is an appropriate place to be, barring the tiny little things like going to a funeral or being outside of a preschool. Other than that, in my personal belief, and in the belief of the United States of America, our founding fathers, and our founding documents, everywhere else is fair game. And I would not only say, go, have fun, do whatever, but I would encourage you to try new locations, to go new places, to find other ways to remind people in ways that they may not want to be reminded, but that they need to be reminded that within their midst, 3,500 human children are going to die today, and they're not doing anything about it.